Hi guys, welcome back to another episode of Evolve. Actually a lot of people have been telling me there are no women on this show. So introducing our first woman, my namesake, Hadasa Modoni. Hadasa Modoni, let me let you introduce yourself.
Thank you so much, namesake. Hi, everyone. My name is Hadasa Modoni. Really excited to be here. I hear that I'm setting the precedence on this show. So I just trust that every other person who comes here, I pray that I set the bar so high that everyone who comes here will bring very transformational content. So I'm Hadasa Modoni. I'm a born-again Christian. I'm a mental health enthusiast, and I like to advocate for mental health, especially in the Christian circles.
Okay, so maybe you can give us a brief background history
of myself.
Of yourself,
all right. So I grew up in different places. To start off, I think my parents were living in Nairobi, Buruburu, and then after some time we went up country. So I can proudly say that I'm a country girl. Yeah, no one should call me a slay queen. I'm a champion, a country girl, kabisa, village champion. And my family has a Christian background, but very, very strict parents. So fun fact, we never used to wear like trousers. I think at some point we even used to wear head wraps. Mokorino, I have a feeling. So it was quite very, very tough. It was a good family, considering that you're living in the confines of Christianity, you're well-mannered, your morals are good. But on the flip side, it was very, very strict. So it was really hard for you to hit that mark of perfection, because the parents are demanding so much from you, so much that you're not even able to become a child. You're always constantly looking forward to, what is it that I've not done? What is it that I need to do so that I can get my parents' approval? And that in itself has effect maybe even on children. But generally, it was a good family. I come from a family of 6 siblings, so we are 7, all of us. And it was good when we were growing up, just a normal family, normal child. I went to church. I really loved church people. I used to preach when I was a young child. And that was basically it. Went to school. And I was a bright child. If I was brainy, I was a bright child, very obedient, and very compliant. I was those kids who could not get into trouble, because I was very compliant. The rules in the house, you just had to be compliant. Anyway, I grew up well when I went, but I realized over time I wasn't so happy with life. Everything was going on well. I could get compliments that, you're very smart. But even at the time, I didn't really know that I was beautiful. I actually think I was a tomboy when I was growing up, because I think I was handsome, instead of beautiful.
You are very beautiful.
Thank you. So we used to shave our hair, but I could get these compliments that I'm a smart baby. I was a smart kid, because I could get those badges. You remember those days of badges? Yes. Best in English, best in what? Yes. I would get so many of those. And but I realized that I really wasn't so vibrant as other kids. And then I'm talented generally. I'm very artistic. I act. Okay, I don't do it actively, but I'm very artistic. I'm a thespian. So if I'm given a platform, I hope your viewers can give me a platform to act.
Definitely.
So I can act, I can sing, I'm very creative, I'm a writer, so I could even write when I was really young. And I had all these things, it was like all encompassing. I'm not only smart in school, but I'm also very artistic, But I seemed to be very lonely. In as much as things were going well for me, I seemed to be very unhappy and very withdrawn. You realize that when I go outside there, I'll be very vibrant. But when I come home, I'll just recoil. I'm not talking. I'm sleeping too much. I'm just looking forward to the next day so that I can go to school. I just seemed not to be as happy. My life was quite lonely. But that was when I was in primary school. So there's that confusion. You're not sure whether it's self-esteem issues. You're not sure whether it's identity issues. So, but either way, I didn't put much thought into it. Actually, looking back in retrospect, that's when now I realize actually something was off even back then. So I managed to pass well my examinations. I go to high school, and then now in high school, that's when I could actually tell something was off. The first time I could now put a finger on, I'm not like other children. Yeah, it's true. I'm passing my exams. I am studying well. And actually, because there was a trend that now started in high school, I really could oversleep. So I'll be the first one to get to the dormitory. Maybe that's at 9. I'm not even taking a shower. Straight kwa kitanda, sure. Then in the morning, you're sleeping at 9. But even at 5, those are enough hours of sleep. You're really struggling. It got so bad that, and then, no one is caring about you. No one is looking after you in high school, everyone for themselves. So people wake up and then they just leave you. You're there. The patron is going round. They're finding you asleep. You're getting punished. But I had a friend of mine. She was 1 year behind me. So it's like she took it upon herself. Every time in the morning, she would wake up, do her stuff, pass by our dormitory, then wake me up, ensure that I go to class, then I would shower after that. So that was actually something that people would joke about it. They'd say, I sleep too much. Actually, there's one chick who kept saying, I was bitten by a tsetse fly. It was funny that time. Because I would really sleep a lot. Then I was very petite. My appetite levels were very low. But, I was actually preaching somewhere and I was saying that people perish. The Bible says that people perish for lack of knowledge. But then it also says that in times of ignorance, God overlooked. So I didn't know what was happening. And it's like God just applied enough grace for me that the little time I spent in books, I was able to absorb so much. And I could also remember that I translated it into my exams and I passed. So I joined campus. And I think that is when now everything unfolded. I realized that I wanted to live in very dingy places. I was alone. I can tell you for sure to date, I didn't establish one relationship with anyone from my class. The only people that I have very distant relationships with from campus are those people I went to Christian Union with, and they were actually behind me. And it's all because I could not really hold relationships. Not that I was a toxic friend, but I just kept people from a distance. I didn't want anyone coming to my space. I was so protective of, and now people call it energy, but then I was just protective of my space. I just felt maybe they're going to hurt me or they were going to leave me. I've not mentioned it, but when I was growing up, I have mentioned that I felt like I would recoil when I got home. And it's maybe because I felt I was a bit neglected as a child. And I felt like I wasn't really treated like every other person in the house. So I think I built walls from that point. So in campus, I'm here. I'm not able to even feed. In high school, food is cooked for you. In campus now, you have to take care of yourself. You have to cook, you have to wash, you have to clean. And I didn't have energy for any of that stuff. I think I used to wash my clothes once per month. And that's when maybe I've put myself together, I've gotten the energy. Studying was really difficult. I didn't attend those lectures. Actually, people used to tell me, hey, nyewe ni mwerevu, because we'd be sitting in class. I've not attended lectures, so I've showed up, they are cut, and then the papers are being passed. Then somebody opens my paper and I'm there. I have maybe 28 out of 30, and they're like, really? Yeah. And you don't even come to class. But let me tell you, one day, I was going to class normally. So even the day I've gotten energy, I've put myself together, I'm going to class. So I find people, they are coming from class, then they're asking me, hey, when you finished so early, Ajay? Then I'm asking them, finish what? Then they tell me, see cat. Actually, there was a cat that day and I didn't know there was actually a cat. That's how bad it was. I wasn't even keeping tab of what is happening. I couldn't stay in the library. My concentration span was very short. But the only thing I remember I used to do consistently was to pray. And I would cry so hard to God. I'd go to the pulpit and I'm just lying down and I'm crying and I'm telling God, this emptiness, there's just an emptiness in me that I can't explain. And if you don't deal with it, if you don't fill this gap, I don't think anyone will ever fill it. And one of the ways I actually tried to fill that gap was getting into casual relationships. You know, you date this person after a week. I think my shortest relationships have been weeks. And you realize they're actually not filling that gap. You move to the other person. They are not actually giving you the satisfaction that you want. And for me, I just knew there was something fundamentally wrong with me. And I managed still to graduate campus with all the challenges, and campus was terrible. Man, it was terrible for me. I saw people thriving in their relationships. I couldn't hold a relationship because I'm feeling if I let somebody in on my life, they'll get to know these flaws and maybe they will go. I just didn't feel secure in me as a person, despite knowing that, you know, you're smart, you're beautiful. I actually struggled with that concept very, very much for a long time, just accepting that you're actually beautiful. You're actually a beautiful woman.
Yeah.
Thank you. And so I just felt something was fundamentally wrong and that people could not love me for who I was as a person. And you know where that goes back to? My childhood, where I felt unless I performed so well, unless I was a good girl, that's the only time my parents accepted me. So I've lived life just working so hard to be accepted, to be approved, yeah? And it goes back all the way to my childhood. So to cut the long story short, I get out of school and I'm now out here, I'm hustling, and by the grace of God, I get a job. And when I got the job, I just realized I'm not even behaving like the other people. Now the trauma is so bad that I'm having outbursts. So mtu ananikosea kidogo, at the slightest inconvenience, I'm shouting, you know, I'm just out of order, I'm not even behaving professionally. And I just knew, I kept knowing something was off. So I used to write a lot. I've told you that. I've been writing since I was young, creative writing. And so I used to pen down all these feelings and all these emotions. And I remember I actually did a piece on my blog, and I was saying, I finally found a name. Because I was I was recounting how my childhood was and some of these things that I've told you. And I was like, all this time I didn't have a name for it until I met someone and they told me, you can actually see a doctor. And I walk into a doctor's room and I'm explaining everything. And you know, the funny part of it is that all this time I'm not in any pain, yeah? So it's an emotional thing. You can't even tell someone, I'm sleeping a lot, so what's wrong with sleeping a lot? You're not eating enough, so what's wrong with that? Someone who just says, you just eat. So just stop oversleeping. Just set your alarm and you'll be good to go. So that is where
Just
the conflict
to cut
was.
you short,
Oh, yeah.
before you went to the doctor, I'm
Yes.
sure you sought other ways.
Yes.
Maybe you can tell us about that.
Yeah, so because I felt, let me say, I felt mostly rejected. I felt like I wasn't accepted. And I think it was self-imposed to some extent, because if maybe I'm your friend and I'm just fearing letting you on in, and then you decide maybe to just go away, you know, I'll feel rejected, yet I'm the person who did not let you in. I felt like I was rejected. Maybe to some extent it was true. And I sought preachers, I sought, you know, like, actually my dad felt like anyway something is off with this guy. Then something else that was consistent was that I was so teary. I would cry a lot. I would break down so many times. I was so sad. I think that's the word. So sad, constantly sad. And so we sought preachers. Like in high school, I could just look for a preacher and I want to talk to them. I cry, they pray for me. And one time, one preacher just told me, you know what, I think this is a spiritual oppression. And from a good heart, I actually lived with them for, I think, a month. And they noticed the pattern. I was just oversleeping. Actually, the thing was, I would oversleep during the day, and at night I'm not sleeping. So it was a combination of insomnia and oversleeping, and then I wasn't eating. So this pastor just looks at me, observe this pattern, and you see you are at somebody else's house and you're oversleeping at somebody else's house. So he tells me, I think, Hadassah, I totally know that it was coming from a good place. And he said, from listening to you, this is a spiritual oppression. And I took it. I know for me, I was so desperate for an answer. I took it. And so, I talked to people, several people, preachers, we prayed. I would be taken to somebody else's house to see maybe if I'll become vibrant. I really try to talk to people.
So now you meet this person?
Yeah, so I met this lady in church, and we were talking, and she kept telling me that, I am unwell, and I would take her for coffee because from the look of things, she was so well put. And, she looked like things were going really well for her, but then she says she's sick. So I would take her for coffees. And naturally, I'm not so inquisitive. I don't meddle in people's business. Yeah. Imagine, even in relationships, I don't even take somebody's phone if I'm dating them to blah, blah, blah. But this one, somehow I was so inquisitive. I just kept asking her, so what's up? Just trust me. Then I would tell her, Mimi, I also have sinusitis. I used to have sinusitis. So for me, I'm thinking this is the biggest diagnosis I can disclose to someone. Then one day she took the bait and she told me that she was struggling with a mental illness. And she gave me the symptoms and everything she was going through. And I told her, you know what? I think I also need to see a doctor. So she told me, yeah, you can see a doctor. Because now I started explaining to her what I felt. And she told me, you're very young. You can't be going through this. So she tells me, you just go see a doctor. But then I don't think you have a problem. She just didn't know the extent to which I really needed that advice. So I walk to a doctor's office. We have a chat. She tells me, I tell her what I'm going through. It's so weird because I started with my background, nini. And she just looked at me and she said, okay, what you're going to do? You're first going to do some blood work and run some tests on you. Then you come back with the results. So I go do that. I was so desperate. So the next day I was there. And this doctor has so many people. So I would queue. I'd leave her office even at midnight. So she tells me, okay, so from what I'm hearing, you actually have a mental illness, and this is depression. She called it depression and mixed anxiety. So she put me on medication for some time. But I was so happy. When I got her name, I was like, oh, I have depression. Wow. What a beautiful thing. And anxiety. Because it now made sense to me why I could feel unsettled, why I was constantly low and sad and empty. And guess what? I start my medication journey, and then now I had to work with the therapist. She remember when I walked into her office, I gave her my whole story. So she tells me I need also to work with a psychologist, and I was so open to getting healed and just getting myself back together. And so I started working with a therapist, just unpacking some of this childhood trauma, some of the past that was so bad for me, the nasty relationships that I got myself into. And I started, the funny thing is, I kept telling my doc, I really don't know what you did to me, but whatever thing you did, it's working. It's really working for me because I became happy. I was like, oh, so I can actually be happy. I can actually be a normal person. I can sleep and say, I'll wake up at 6 and wake up at 6. So that can happen to me. And I felt normal for the very first time. Yeah. Anyway. You hear me?
Yeah,
you feel me?
So now you have the diagnosis, and so now you can get into relationships, you can hold a job. So now what happens next?
All right. So I get the diagnosis, but it really doesn't stop there. Let me tell you. So I was happy to get the diagnosis, but after some time, you're like, oh my God, wait a minute, I have depression. And then for me, because of the excitement, if I met with someone, I now felt like I wanted to explain to them why I used to behave the way I used to behave. Yeah. So I told them, you know what, I was told I have depression. Then the reaction you get from someone, what? depression. And then the stigma now started coming. I realized, oh my God, this is not something that is spoken in loud tones. Everyone is shying about. They're actually demonizing you because of it. So then I now started facing the stigma from people that I shared with. I felt, oh my God, why did I even dare tell people? And then let me just say, put it this way. When I started out with medication, I realized some was not even working for me. So there's some medication that could make me sleep even for 36 hours or 2 days. So we had to actually work with my doctor to try and look what actually worked for me. And during that time, I got a different diagnosis based on the symptoms that I was presenting at the time. So we realized that I had these very highs and very lows. There are times when I'm upbeat, can do anything. I'm invincible. I'm dreaming things. I'm saying one day I'll become the president of this country. Anyway, I didn't think anything like that. But, big things, I felt like I could do anything. Then the next time I'm like, there's nothing I can do. Here and there, struggling with suicidal thoughts, just feeling like, I don't think I would mind if I died. And then, or sometimes you watch on the news, someone has died and you're like, why was it not me? Those subtle thoughts, yeah? You don't have an active plan of doing it, but you're like, I wouldn't mind. I really wouldn't mind. And actually, those are some of the things, even in church, we need to look out for. When someone just says, especially in church, it will be used in the religious terms. Someone will just be saying, I don't mind being with the Lord. But anything that is against life, that is an alarm, a red light to look out for. Yeah, so I just realized now there's stigma about it. So even when you're dating, you're really not sure, when do I disclose this thing? When do I say it? I actually remember someone I was seeing, and when we broke up, it was actually a very beautiful relationship. But then when we broke up, those people who try to get back at you, and this guy told me, you are actually bipolar. Yeah, and then it hit me. At first, I was hurt. I was like, how can you use sensitive information that I trusted you with against me? Then I sat down and I was like, I'm actually it. But my life has not stopped, and I owned my story. Yes, and now I share my story. Yeah, because I know there are actually people, and particularly in church, who are struggling, who are facing the stigmatization, some who are unaware completely that they have the problem, some who are aware, but they are all masking it up in prayer. But there's my favorite, my mentor in mental health issues. She's called Dr. Anita Phillips. She says, she's a therapist actually, and a pastor at the same time. She says that prayer is a weapon. Therapy is a strategy. So we are not discounting prayer and what it can do, but what we are saying is, if I have a headache, you'll tell me to take painkiller and also to pray. So we're also saying, if someone has a mental health issue, don't just pray. Don't just put oil on your head, but let's also look for other alternatives and other things. So actually, that's where now my passion came from, where I said, in churches, that is where I grew up. Grew up with parents who could not even put a name on what I was going through. So why don't I advocate it in the Christian spaces? Yeah.
You know what's so beautiful and what clicks is I also went through depression.
Oh, yeah.
And I didn't have a name for it. And when I got a name for it, I was like, finally.
Yeah.
Like, at least I know what it is. And so I don't know. The relationship that is so, I think so many people are struggling because they don't have a name for it.
It's true.
And the minute you seek help in the churches, they're not very well equipped on how to handle a person who is going through a mental problem. Yeah. And so I don't know how it starts with you and I, how you and I can, you're already doing it.
Yeah, I'm already
can
doing
just
it.
Best empower the churches so that when people come, they are not secluded or told it's a demon, and they can be able to be guided to the right places to seek help.
Yeah. And this is what I normally say, that we don't have to go outside of church to get anything. We don't have to borrow principles from the world for them to work for us. We actually have everything in the Word of God. So even mental illness, it's something that is in the Bible. Traumas, they're in the Bible. If you look like the story of Jacob, Jacob went through a generational kind of trauma where his dad had favorites. He favored Esau over Jacob. And then you realize that Jacob's mom is actually manipulating Jacob to go and lie to his father that he's Esau. That those kind of dynamics, that this was such an dysfunctional family. So we don't have to look for someone like David. If you read the book of Psalms 102, he gives a recount of symptoms of depression. He says that I cannot sleep, I cannot eat. He's just talking about this. He feels like my enemies are against him. He's recounting how he was depressed. If you read so many Psalms, it's David just crying out for God, why have you abandoned me? He seemed like he really lived a very empty life. Look at Saul. Some theologians argue that he actually had bipolar because it says that he had an unsettling spirit, and that is why David would come to play the harp for him for his spirits to be calmed down. So even in church, you don't really need to look any further. It's in the Word of God, and we are equipped on how to actually do it. Even like what David used to do, he used to journal. Do you know journaling is actually a very healthy way of expressing your emotions? So we have it even in churches. And it's time that we now became very vocal about it, encouraging our people to go to therapy. There's absolutely no shame and nothing wrong in walking into a therapist's place. Dr. Anita Phillips says, I will drive in the doctor's place, praying and speaking in tongues, and I'll get into the therapist's place, and I will tell her, I am praying that God is going to use you to help me get over these traumas. So there's nothing we are separating. We are praying, we are making declarations, we are seeing therapists, we are saying that God, you are the source of my healing. Every other thing is a resource that you're using to bring my healing. You want me to be whole. You want me to overcome these traumas. So we are attacking it from all angles. If it is to cry, if it is to pray, if it is to read the Word of God, if it is to proclaim it, if it is to sit down with a therapist, if it is to take the medication, God, I'm doing it for me to be whole, whatever it takes.
Hadassah, you're just a bundle of beauty, brains, and wisdom. So let's just talk a bit about bipolar.
All right.
So what are some of the symptoms that you exhibit when you're having bipolar?
All right. So bipolar, it's actually called bipolar mood disorder. It's under the DSM. DSM is the Diagnostic Statistical Manual for Mental Illnesses. So just like physical illnesses, by the way, they have a book for themselves. And then mental illnesses, they have the DSM-5. So bipolar mood disorder is there. And there are two types of it. There's bipolar 1 and bipolar 2. So bipolar 1 is when someone has highs, because bipolar is 2, yeah? So maniac and depression. So someone who has bipolar 1, they have more of the high episodes. These are people who will tend to have a lot of energy. They're not even sleeping at night. They tend to be very active and more than the depressive side. Then the people who have bipolar 2 mood disorder, they tend on the lower side, on the depressive side. So they are more depressed than they are hyper. Yeah, but they all tend to oscillate there. Then someone who has bipolar, their moods tend to oscillate so much. So 1 minute I'm happy, the next I am not. And I know people would say, I also get moody.
Yeah,
but
I also do.
you also do. And
yeah.
even they say women, when it's that time of the month, yes, they get to be moody. But now for someone who has bipolar, it shifts in minutes or seconds. One time you're high, the next you're sad, you're crying. It's so...
In a span of how long?
A very short time, even seconds. You could just be sitting like this, we are talking, and then I'm crying the next second.
Then you will...
Yeah, then I
laugh
flip
after
back.
how long?
Seconds or minutes. Yeah, it's so swift. And actually one of the things that the medication does for bipolar is that it lengthens the time in which your mood changes. So you actually feel so good that if you stay for a very long time, before your mood changes. That is the magic of the medication. Yeah, so for me, I was diagnosed with bipolar 2 mood disorder. So I was more on the depressive side. That is why I was so sad for a very long time. Yeah, but then now with medication, there's something that's called serotonin in the brain, because essentially mental health illnesses, it's just a deficit of chemicals that are being produced in the brain. So there's serotonin. Serotonin is the feel-good chemical, yeah? So like for a normal person who just wakes up and they're happy, it's because there's enough supply of the serotonin. And then someone who is now mentally ill, and we are just saying that it's the brain that is sick. The same way the kidney, the lung can get sick, it's the same way this person is sick. So there's a limited supply of serotonin. So when you take the medication, it stabilizes that. The serotonin is enough and you're good. You're back to doing whatever thing you want to do. Yeah.
So you have to take the medication throughout?
You have to really work with your doctor. You have to work with your doctor. You are not supposed to, first of all, self-diagnose. So even this information we are given here, no one should just sit down and say, I also have bipolar.
Yes.
Based on that story, I have depression. No one should self-diagnose themselves. You need to actually seek professional help, because we're actually not professionals. This is purely from experience. Yeah, you need to work with your doctor, so that you tweak those medications. See, like I've told you, when I first started, that medication was not working for me. I was given some more. And then now I have walked with her through the journey that I only occasionally take a drug when I need to. Yeah.
What?
Yes, when I need to.
How did you get there?
The
Because I
grace
know
of
it's
God.
really hard. I know it's so hard, because I listened to Shebesh's story, and she was saying how hard it was for her to manage. She's also bipolar, to manage. And so I'm wondering how you got there.
Yeah, you have really to be very persistent and very open with your doc. I can't sit here and applaud myself. I've done a good job. I have failed terribly, especially when I used to face stigma. I used to feel, no, I don't even want to take this medication. Unless someone comes to my house, then they Google the medication. I don't know if you do that. If I go to somebody's house and I see drugs, I have to Google. So I used to have that fear. Hey, mtu akikuja angalia hapa hizi ni... Actually, I would take the drug and someone is asking me, hiyo ni ya nini? And I'll say ni ya kichwa. Naumwa na kichwa. So that time, I actually stopped taking and I relapsed. And for me, I have a fear of relapsing over taking the medication. I'd rather take the medication than I relapse. So yeah, the point I'm driving home is that you have to really be consistent with the medication. Just follow what the doctor is telling you.
What happens when a person relapses? Because you've said that's your fear.
Yeah, when you relapse, it's like you start all over again. So you get depressed. If maybe you're bipolar 1, you become maniac, you are not able to hold down a job, you're not able to hold relationships, because mental illnesses, mental health issues, what they do is that they affect the way you think, they affect and the way you behave. There are 3 things. It's the way you think and behave. I can't remember the third one. So the behavior is actually very much affected, and that also includes how you relate with other people. So essentially, when you relapse, is that now you are dysfunctional. You're not able to function again properly. Yes.
Oh, wow, that's so unbelievably.
Yeah. So.
Sorry?
Yeah, so that's actually something that can be taken note by maybe someone who is affected and also the caregivers, how important it is for someone to stay on their medication.
How can support be given so that you don't feel judged? Like, you don't feel like someone is overbearing, but you feel like there's that support. At that time, probably, because now you're managing just properly. At that time, when you didn't know the symptoms,
I just wanted to be accepted, to be loved, for someone to know I am more than a diagnosis. Because a lot of things are still going on in my life. I'm still working. I am me. I feel I'm talented. So just love me. I just wanted that love. Yeah, and that's something we can actually give to people. because you realize there are some who refuse their diagnosis. You know, they reject even the medication. At that time, what do? You just love them. You tell them, I just want you to be my friend. I don't want you to be anything else. I want you to be my friend. I want you to be my daughter. I want you to be my son. I want you to be my spouse, you know. And that love will actually compel people to do what they need to do. Very biblical. The Bible says that it's the kindness of God that leads people to repentance. So when we are also kind to people, they tend to reciprocate. They tend to give us more than we even want from them. Yeah, so at the time, that's what I needed, which I got. You know, when the first time I got to therapy, they asked for my parents. We actually did a family therapy. Yeah, where everyone had to be explained to that this is what is happening. Don't blame yourselves. You did not do anything, because, you know, trauma can be passed to us. Actually, my YouTube channel is called, okay, I've started marketing myself on somebody else's
Go ahead.
channel.
Please go ahead. It's very powerful. Yeah.
My YouTube channel is called Home, and Home is healing of my emotions. It's an acronym, but the heart of it is just to say that most of us were broken in homes, and the people who broke us, they did what they did best with the information they had and with what they had at their disposal. So I can't say my parents intentionally chose to neglect me. We were so many of us. Maybe the attention went, you know, ilipotelea huko katikati. So I can't really say that whatever thing they did was intentional, but one way or the other, it broke me. But the intention of God for a home and a family was to bring healing. And that's why my YouTube channel is called Home, so that the same place that we were broken from, we may get the healing from. So the whole point that I was saying is that we got information. My parents were talked to. They were told, don't blame yourselves. You did what you could at the time. So from now on, let's work on how she can be back on her feet, on how she can be whole. Yeah, and I got that support to date. Oh, I feel the support. Yes. Yes.
So you've told us there is bipolar 1 and bipolar 2. So bipolar 2, it's when you have more of, you exhibit more symptoms of depression. And bipolar 1 is when
on a high.
Yes. So how do you support someone who has bipolar 1 and they're mostly on the high?
On the high. So there's also medication that comes and brings them down. And at the time, you know, I think mostly bipolar is what is associated with, you see people being wanafungwa, you know, people just doing such kind of things, which are really bad, so I think that the best thing you can do is just to talk to them, be present, tell them, you know, make them understand why they need to be maybe in a hospital, but really not forcefully. Yeah, that's what I would say. Yeah, and make sure that this person always have medication, so that when it happens, they take their medication, they are calmed down, and they're able to continue with life. Yeah.
Okay. So can mental illnesses in general be transferred to your children or something?
So it takes different forms. There's actually what is called clinical depression. Clinical depression is when it just happens like any other disease. The way I can wake up in the morning with a heart disease, then that's the same way you can clinically get sick and you can get treated for it. Then there's also, actually they say there's no, we cannot attribute it to a single source. Yeah, so one can be genetic. You can come from a family that has had a history of it, so you can be predisposed to it. And then trauma also predisposes people to mental illnesses. Yes, so one is very purely biological, and then genetics, and also trauma, childhood trauma. It doesn't have to be childhood. Any form of trauma can predispose you to mental illnesses. Yeah.
Now you're managing it, can bipolar get to a point where you don't, I don't know the right word to use, but where you don't have it anymore?
Well, this is what they say about mental illnesses. You have to manage it for the rest of your life. But the beauty of it is that if you work closely with your doctors and your therapist, and you research. Personally, I just say you also need to do a lot of research. So you're self-aware. You know your triggers. You know what you need not to do. You know the people that you need to let go of, the people you need to keep close. A lot of research also helps for you to become self-aware. But the whole point that they say is that you need to work with your doctor as well so that they can go reducing the medication. But I'm a believer. I believe in the power of God. I believe in miracles. And you can get healed forever.
I love how you've drawn the relationship of mental health with the Bible,
Yeah.
but still encourage people to go for therapy.
Yes.
So there's a person there who is wondering, who is seeing you, and they're like, you can afford therapy. And me, I can't. Even food is a struggle.
Yes.
So where do you seek help?
Actually, that's a challenge that we are having in the country. I was doing my own research, and the ratio of a doctor, especially a psychiatrist, first of all, we have about 116 psychiatrists in the country. Yet, about 40% of people who are seen outpatient in hospitals, 40% are struggling with a mental illness, and then 25% who are inpatient, they have a mental illness and they do not know. So you can see the disparity about the patients, the people who are struggling, and especially Kenya being a low-income country, poverty, economic strains, those are some of the things that are also impacting on people. They're placing pressure on people, so they're predisposed to some of these challenges. So you can see it's such a huge gap in the country. It's not just a problem that we are dealing with on the face value. Also, the government has a lot to do for people to just access primary care, health care for mental health. Because if we are having only 116 psychiatrists, and the population is about 52 million. You can see the gap, how big that gap is. So generally, the challenge is actually starting from up there, leave alone even someone affording it. That being said, even if someone cannot, there are hospitals like these level 5s, most of them will have affordable access to mental health treatment. There are also some organizations, and I know one, which maybe I can recommend to people. It's called Kamili. It's in Lower Kabete. It's an NGO. Kamili actually means whole, in English. And Kamili, they offer free consultation, first of all. They offer medication at very subsidized prices, and they offer free counseling. So, it's just also being proactive from wherever you are. If you really wanted, you can get the help. Actually, it starts with the willingness. Then you can find the help. And maybe the very first step is even having the awareness. Just getting the information, the right information. And then, as I was saying, the level 5s, people can comfortably walk there. People have a stigma they have a perception about Mathare Hospital, but it is open,
Yeah, it's so beautiful.
Yeah, it's beautiful. I've not been there.
It's very beautiful.
Oh, really?
Yeah. When you are going there and you are at the stage, somebody said, Ati, I'll say it in Kikuyu, Kikuyu.
Yes.
Ati kwa goma. There's a lot of stigma with mental health. And so I was scared. But then when I went inside, it's so beautiful. The staff are so friendly. No one is in cages. People are walking freely. Even the people there, the patients, they are just so friendly. You can walk, you can say hi to them.
Yeah.
Everybody is in control. And it's all affordable as well. It's 200 for individual therapy and group therapy.
Imagine. So even like that low kabisa person, we can changa for 200 and you're fair to get there, It also comes from the willingness. And walking into a hospital with the understanding that I'm just sick, like the person who has homa, it's very liberating. You're walking to Mathare very confidently knowing I'm just unwell. I'm just sick. I'm not demon possessed. I'm not crazy. I'm just unwell. And I'm going there to seek help. So I think even the heart of it will have to come from information. And so congratulations even for such a great platform that will bring the information and the awareness that people need.
How do you break the stigma? Because I think the stigma is what even prevents people from getting healing. How can we break the stigma?
Let me tell you, fun fact. I was doing my research, and I realized that lack of accessibility is such a huge challenge. One, because of the resources, lack of resources. One, lack of budget and funding in hospitals and mental health facilities. But do you know what follows? Secondly, it is stigma, especially in African settings. The biggest challenge to accessibility to mental health primary care is stigma. So it plays such a huge role. And you know what else that research was saying? It was saying that people who actually play a very important role, but they are not aware of, they are religious leaders. Why? Because most communities attribute mental illnesses to what? To a spiritual dimension. They tend to think that it has a spiritual factor to it. So even religious leaders, I wish they could, and they are very influential towards their people. If they could only also embrace this topic, get to learn about it, and separate the spiritual bit of it. And like the fact that you have the Bible doesn't mean you cannot read another book. Yeah,
True.
it's not the only book we
True,
have. Yeah,
yes.
we can still read the Bible, and I can read
Yes,
another book.
yes.
So I encourage also our spiritual leaders to also understand how influential they are and how instrumental they can be in just bringing in the information to their people. That being said, such a platform is also great. You don't know how many people you are helping to feel comfortable about this topic, about this subject. And also the what I'm doing, what other people
what you're
are
doing
doing.
is also amazing.
Yeah, so that people just get the awareness. That is one way of killing the trauma, the stigmatization, because people will feel, so that chick also went to therapy. Actually, some can even afford, but for them it's just that, that stigma that they don't want to go and do what they need to do. So these conversations, they're not going to stop. We are going to the end of it all, until we see people are liberated.
And when you're talking and you're sharing about your high school experience, I saw you in high school. And I was like, you and I, and though you were just so eloquent and what, we need to go to high schools, because I'm sure there are girls there who are really, and even boys, who don't even know what it is they're dealing with, but just having this conversation. And you and I showing them how we've been able to overcome would help them. So that's something, honestly, Esther, you and I, Hadassah, we're calling you Esther. You and I, we can probably do to help break the stigma.
Yes. And, just helping children understand where they come from and maybe how their background has affected them, who they are, and just letting them know that life doesn't have to be that way. Yeah, because some children come from very dysfunctional homes, some separated parents, some violent parents, and you just need to let them understand that notwithstanding the environment, you can still have, create a healthy environment for you as a person. Yeah. So that's something we can take up.
Lawrence, we are taking it up.
Yes,
we really need to. We really need to. We owe it to what?
To
ourselves, and to just we just
our
need to do it here.
generation. I keep saying that we are such a broken generation that needs a lot of healing. Yeah.
I don't know, that was such a beautiful conversation, because today we're talking about you've converted your pain into purpose. That is so difficult to do. And you've gotten your purpose from your struggles. And I think everybody who is just going through loss, moment of loneliness and what we should ask ourselves, what is God trying to pull out from me? Because in our loneliness, God brings out the purpose.
Actually, I love the way you have put it, that what is God trying to pull out? Because this is something else we have seen in Christian circles, where people try to tell you that whatever you went through in life, it's because God was trying to make you strong. I don't believe in such kind of God who makes you become sexually abused when you're young, when you're just a child, for him to make you strong. No. But the God I believe in is he can squeeze something good out of something bad. So it's true, we can go through experiences, We cannot attribute them to God because God is a loving Father. But if we give it to Him, He's able to bring something good and beautiful out of it. And I'm happy that He has done that for me. Yeah, that He's used my pain, my lonely days, and turned them into a ministry. Yeah.
You know, Hadassah, you're such a blessing. I've been listening to your channel. I've been listening to your sermons, and you're such a blessing to this world.
Thank you, my dear.
Because honestly, you make a person think. You know, it's like God sends you to instill questions and answers into people. You're such a blessing, and I pray you continue doing what it is that you're doing.
Thank you so much.
Yes. So I would allow you to share your YouTube. You said it's called Home.
Yes.
So we can share here so that people can subscribe. There's a lot of rich information there. Then also, is there something else probably we've not covered? And it's so important to the conversation today?
Yeah, I think most of it we have covered. And maybe in Christian spaces and, okay, I wanted to say at Africans and yeah.
We are Africans.
But we need really to get comfortable with this conversation, and especially people in the church, that it is not a curse. No one is demon possessed. Let's get those people out. Let's understand that healing is possible. And whatever happened to us, that was not our fault. But our healing is our responsibility. We got to take responsibility of ourselves. And when we do that, we are not doing it for ourselves. We are doing that for generations. It is where you stand and say that rejection stops with me. Trauma stops with me. I choose to be a very deliberate and intentional parent, that my children will not have to suffer the kind of trauma that I went through. So when you take up your healing journey, when you start it off, you're not doing it for yourself. You're doing it even for people to come. That way we are going to become healthier friends. We are going to become healthier spouses. We are going to become healthier parents. And we are just going to raise a better and healed generation.
The end. It's just like the way you get into an accident and the car is broken down and you have to go to the hospital to fix the injuries. It's the same thing with the brain. When you suffer a traumatic experience, it could be death of a loved one, it could be the end of a relationship, it could be loss of a job, it could be a harsh environment when you're growing up. It could be anything rather. It causes a damage to your brain and you need to go to the hospital to get a healing so that you can become better. Absolutely. So in the same way, let us just embrace everybody who is going through a mental struggle, because support is number one thing into healing. And so I don't know if there's something else.
Just to tell people, let's attack mental illnesses from all corners. Call the name of Jesus, read the Bible, apply the oil on the whatever, walk to the doctor's office, therapy, journal it down. We can do this.
We can. Yes, we can. Yes. So that's it, guys. That was such an amazing episode. This is Evolve Africa, where we are constantly growing by acquiring knowledge to become better people. The end. Cheers. Oh, we make lemonade. Lemons out of lemonade.
Lemonade. Huh? Lemonade out of lemon.
Yeah, when life gives us lemon, pain, we make lemonade and we create. Cheers.